How do we effectively show love to people that are lost? They're coming from a transgender background or a homosexual background. Oftentimes, it sounds kind of like when Christians say, "Oh, I'm being hard on you because I love you." I feel like sometimes Christians say that as an excuse just to be mean, and they don't truly love them. How do we truly extend the olive branch and say, "Hey, look, I'm going to be firm in what the church teaches and in what I believe, because of the church, um, but I'm going to love you. So I'm not going to accept your position that you hold, but I'm going to extend the olive branch, and I want to show you love, and I want you to know that you are loved and you are worthy of love."
Yeah, sure. We have to recognize that the world is trying to offer love without truth, and we often make the mistake of offering truth without love. Love without truth is not really love. Objectively, it's not love. It's a false love. It's a distortion, and often it works against true love. Truth without love is ineffective, and sometimes it's just plain counterproductive. It actually drives people away. So we need to have a proper balance here, which means first and foremost, we have to be living it. If we're not living it, who are we to speak on others when we can't even follow truth and love in ourselves in our own lives? So first, we must live it. Secondly, we need to make a distinction between the purveyors of demonic ideologies and the victims. And the victims often become the cheerleaders. They become purveyors in their own right, but they don't fully know what they're doing. They're not intentionally leading people astray. It's because they've been given this false notion of love, and they're trying the best they can to act on that love without realizing that it's a distortion, that it's false. So I think when we come across someone who's struggling with these things, the first thing we need to recognize is that their heart yearns for the same things our hearts yearn for. And they've been given a false bill of sale. They've been given a bunch of lies that are cloaked in truth, in the language of truth, that are cloaked in the language of mercy and love. And their hearts are still yearning for true goodness and true beauty and true truth. Their hearts are still yearning for good things, but they've been misled. And so the first thing we have to recognize is that deep down, there is still a person made in the image of God there. There's still a person made in the image of God, and whether they realize it or not, they're actually seeking the likeness of God. They just don't know how yet. And for that reason, I think that we can go in with a little bit of a softer approach with most. Then we have to listen. We have to listen, and we have to help people, I think, explore what their heart is really yearning for. We also have to know with a great deal of wisdom when to speak and when not to speak. There are plenty of people who they're too steeply embedded. They're too deeply embedded with a lot of this ideology that they can't properly hear yet. And we have to know that sometimes those discussions are going to just descend into arguments, and that's not going to be very helpful. And then we have to understand that the best thing we can do is, rather than tell them everything that's wrong with their perspective, because when you're deeply embedded in a perspective, it's very hard to see from a different perspective. It's hard to get yourself out of that. It's better simply to show them the light and beauty and truth of orthodoxy. And I think that the more we show them the glory and beauty of the Christian faith, the more it becomes an attraction. Now, all this assumes something that I think people forget all too readily today, that the goal is not to change them in the moment. The goal is to plant some seeds. The best thing you can do is plant some seeds. And I have had plenty of people come to the faith after hearing something that did not resonate with them in the moment, or seeing something that meant nothing to them in the moment. And years later, it awoke in them. Then they were ready to hear it. And they came to the church. I'll say one last thing about personal experience with this. We have had in this parish, and I know plenty of other priests who have had others in their parishes come, who entered the parish at the tail end of them embracing the radical sexual and gender ideologies of today. We've had people in this parish who came in as transgender. And in every single case that I know of, those who have detransitioned those who have sought Christ in repentance have said that indeed Christ is what they were actually yearning for in the first place. They have openly said that they are resentful of the ideology that was presented to them, that had they never been presented with transgenderism as an option to begin with, they would have never even considered it. And they almost wish they'd lived in a time when that was never an option to begin with. They're embittered by those who intentionally ignored and pushed aside all the negative consequences of embracing this ideology and embracing this lifestyle. But they were able to find peace with Christ. And that, I think, is a proof that what the hearts yearn for all along is Christ, which means that if we're going to present Christ to them, we better present Christ in a way where he seems desirable,